Velkommen til Succes Veterinær Praksis podcast nummer 65. Hej, Søren Pejstrup her. Jeg er dyrlæge, og jeg har bloggen Succes Veterinær Praksis, hvor vi sammen søger at få sunde patienter og tilfredse klienter i et meningsfyldt arbejdsliv. Og lige præcis det skal vi dykke ned i dag. For måske har du mere indflydelse på din egen følelse af lykke, end du selv går og tænker. Og måske har du mere kontrol over din stress og din dårlige chef, end du måske føler. Du kan selvfølgelig ikke kontrollere andre mennesker, men du kan gøre noget ved den måde, du selv reagerer på. Og det er måske ikke dig, der burde lave noget om, men du har muligheder. Det er vist nok cirka budskabet i dagens podcast. Jeg har snakket med happiness coach Ron de Jong. Han er fra Holland, så jeg siger helt sikkert ikke hans navn helt korrekt. Ron, han nævner på et tidspunkt, at man kan skifte arbejde som en mulighed, og selvom det måske er en mulighed, er det nok en af de mere ekstreme. Ron, han skrev til mig efter interviewet, at han ville gerne være sikker på, at det ikke skulle lyde som om, at det er den eneste mulighed. Vi snakker også om, hvordan at man kan fokusere på det personlige og på kommunikationen, og det kan i mange situationer være det bedste, siger Ron, for det kommer til at spare dig for en masse jobhopperi. Jeg nævner tit shownoterne til hvert enkelt afsnit, og i dag ligger de på SIVP65, og i dag er der virkelig god grund til at besøge hjemmesiden. Ron, han giver nemlig en gratis coaching-session til en af jer, der lytter med her i podcasten. Han er en utrolig dygtig coach, og I finder sammen et tidspunkt, der fungerer på Skype, så det er en virkelig god gevinst at få her. Og det er virkelig gratis. Du skal ikke betale for det. Du skal ikke engang give din e-mail for det. Det er noget, Ron han kalder paid forward, eller paid forward-tanken, hvor man uden at forvente at få noget igen, hjælper et andet menneske. Og da Ron er en dygtig coach, er det oplagt at hjælpe et andet menneske med coaching. Til gengæld så forventer Ron, at du så gør noget positivt igen for et andet menneske. Det behøver ikke være noget stort eller noget fancy, men det handler om at sprede glæden og sprede de positive handlinger. Og for ligesom at give lidt inspiration, så aftalte vi under interviewet, at for at komme i puljen på at komme i betragtning til den her gratis coaching-session, så kunne du skrive i kommentarfeltet over på hjemmesiden, hvad du kunne forestille dig at gøre som en positiv handling over for et andet menneske. Det gør du i shownoterne på SIVP65. Skriv i shownoterne der, skriv i kommentarerne nederst, hvad du kunne forestille dig at gøre som en positiv handling for et andet menneske. Og så søndag den 21. januar 2018, så finder vi ud af, hvem der skal have coaching-sessionen. Hvis du lytter til det her efter den dato, så er det selvfølgelig overstået, men du kan jo så i kommentarerne se alle de gode idéer til positive handlinger, andre har foreslået. Det kan være en god idé at skrive på engelsk, da Ron jo er hollænder og selvfølgelig ikke forstår dansk, men hvis du skriver på dansk, så skal jeg nok sørge for at få dem oversat til Ron. Det er altså i shownoterne på SIVP.dk/65, og så over til interviewet med Ron. Hi Ron.
Hi Søren.
And welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
I'm very thrilled to have you on here because I know my audience is struggling a lot with the kind of topic that you're actually an expert in. So I'm looking very much forward to what's coming up here, and I have a feeling that there's going to be assignments for us as well, but we'll see what you have for us. Can you please give an introduction to who you are and what it is that you do?
Well, my name is Ron de Jong. I am a veterinarian who is now active as a coach and trainer and consultant on happiness at work. I started a project a few years ago called the Pursuit of Veterinary Happiness, which was originated from me being a coach, and with my background as a veterinarian, having a lot of veterinarians as clients. And of course, when you're working with vets who are experiencing problems, then you've got this view about the veterinary field that, well, it's mainly problems. Of course, that's not true. So I started to to search for what are actually the elements of happiness and how can we learn about happiness at work. What are the factors that would be helpful? And this project kind of got out of hand totally. So I first started talking to vets and non-clients. So what's making you happy at work? And I found were great conversations and very nice to hear what happens when you're asking about these very positive elements. And of course, the positive elements were also already always the goal for the coaching programs I did. So when comparing, when a client was done in a program, then you'd be happy to hear how that worked. But I was very keen on searching what people who don't need that kind of professional help would say about the field. Well, the program totally got out of hand because I learned so much about different studies and universities who are really looking into that in depth. So I started studying and enrolling in some how do you call it, schoolings. And well, you just said I'm an expert. I tend to feel that's still a bit strong, but on the other hand, people are telling me from the field, yeah, you are an expert now. So I'm not. It's nice to hear that.
I haven't been studying too much on happiness, but I get the sense when I'm reading on your websites that you know what you're talking about. So that's what I'm building it on, anyways.
Thank you. Good to hear. Good to hear.
I feel that we should, before we kick off here, talk a little bit about the word happiness in itself, because in Danish, when it can translate into two different words. One is the kind of happiness that you just feel when you go to the amusement park or Legoland and
right.
you are happy for the day. That's one kind of. It leans more towards joy than happiness, and the other word is the kind of happiness that you feel when on your wedding day or on your child's birthday or something like that. It's a feeling that nothing can go wrong, and this is just the meaning of life kind of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's great you point that out, because there's indeed the word happiness in the small sense, I'd say, would not address the total experience we're talking about here. In a broader sense, happiness is far more than just that cheerful, full of joy emotion we're discussing just now. So there are different elements, and when talking about happiness or talking about veterinary happiness, as I do, then I mean indeed happiness in a broader sense. So there are more elements than just that element of pleasure and that element of positive emotion to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Why is it actually that we have to talk about this? Why do we have to talk about happiness and work towards happiness? Isn't that something that is happening to us?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's right away the biggest pitfall probably for people to tumble into. Maybe you've got a Facebook site or your audience may have, and if you're looking at profile pics, sometimes you might think, well, everybody is happy. And if you're buying a magazine, and there's even magazines that are called happiness, and well, it seems to be such a trend. Everybody is talking about happiness, which would give you the idea that you actually should be happy. And if you're not happy, then you're probably the biggest loser of all, making you even more unhappy. So that's one thing, the idea that you should be happy. And the other thing is what you pointed out, is that it should come natural. It should just be there. And the thing is, that's not really true. Being happy at work or experience happiness at work actually does take effort, and it can take a lot of effort. That's the main thing why we should be discussing it. If everybody would be happy or happy enough, then of course we wouldn't do this show. Although you don't have to be unhappy to work on happiness. I would advise to keep on working on it. Yeah.
So it's not something that happens naturally. You do have some say in what's going on. You do have some control over how much happiness you're going to feel.
Yes, there is influence on happiness. If you ask people what would make them happy, first let me point out you can be happy all the time. That's good to say as well, because some people tend to think that you can be all the time, and some people might obsessively pursue that feeling to be happy all the time. And your pursuit of veterinary happiness should be more subtle than that. So that actually people who do that and who think they should be happy all the time, they tend to get unhappier. Now, when talking about influence, it's nice to address what people say when you're asking what would make you happier. And they tend to give all kinds of external factors to you. So, well, if that would alter, then I would be happier. One of them could be salary, compensation for your work. But actually, when you're looking in a broad perspective of all kinds of jobs, salary doesn't come way up there in the list unless people are being paid unfairly. Then it will make them unhappy. So that's an important one. But there's been a great study done by Sonja Lear-Bemersky, who is one of the lead researchers of positive psychology. Excuse me. And she pointed out that external factors only make out for about 10% of happiness. So that's relatively small, or actually very small.
Sounds very small. Sometimes it feels like the other way around. It's like only 10% is...
Indeed. Yeah, so you're very right. Our experience of it is it tends to be quite different. Now, these are averages, of course, and there's more studies being done, and there's some alterations in the numbers, but it's still it goes from 10 to maybe 20%, but still it's a really small portion on average that accounts for happiness from external factors. 50% of happiness is from genetics or personal traits. So you actually, if you've got the right combo of genes, this will help you be happier. And so you can be thankful or a bit less thankful to your parents for that.
That sounds unfair.
It sounds unfair. Well, the good thing is there's also 40% of actions and thoughts that are influenceable that you that attribute to happiness. So what I do when I do coaching or training with teams is I focus on these 10% of external factors. I give more insight in what they are and how they are bugging you, sort of less. And then we turn to the 50% of personality traits, teaching people to get a bit more insight on how they are, or what they are, what their personality is, and more important, how they are coping with that personality, or how they are using it. And when you've got more insight in this situation, when you then go to the 40% of actions and thoughts, then you can use that insight to change your actions, to change your sometimes change your thoughts about stuff. And that is very beneficial to happiness at work, and therefore there's a lot of influence. And most of the time, people don't really see that influence. You just told it yourself. It sometimes seems totally the other way around. People thinking I've got no influences at all. And I think if you are stuck in that place, feeling you've got no influence and are unhappy, or you would want to be happier, and same goes for other goals you might have, then it's good to investigate that, and if needed, or if you can, take some help with that, because pointing out what is your ineffective behavior, getting more insight in that, and that do that with a goal in mind and then work on it is really helpful and worthwhile.
I like to dive deeper into each of those areas, but I have one concern I'd like to ask you about first here. And you sort of mentioned it before we started recording, that people tend to invest more in courses and development in skin cytology and oncology and internal medicine, surgery and all that technical and veterinary knowledge, but not investing too much time or too much money into the personal development. And I run into that concern as well with this success in veterinary practice name, because this is sort of similar, striving towards a feeling of success in everyday life. And people tell me, but I'm not the kind of person that is striving towards success. I'm not the person that strives towards happiness. Because it's calculative. It's very. I'm struggling to find the right English words here.
Well, maybe I can help you there. Correct me if I'm not getting the right thing out of it. But I think many times people tend to invest in more technical stuff, more medical stuff, easier. Probably because it's safer, but also because of the notion you just mentioned that it should come natural. So I think that's one of the most important information or advices I would like to give to your audience, is to actually choose to invest in that, and may it be time or money or energy, or how do you call it, but to invest in that part of being successful and being happy. Now, there's another interesting bridge between those two. I mean, most people pursue success, and they pursue success for the means to become happy. It's a pretty classic way of dealing. People want to get success, and then they think, well, if I got success, then I've got money and I've got status, and that will make me happy. And what actually it actually does help you become happy. So when people get more successful, they get happy. But then, of course, when they got this success, the happiness kind of diminishes after a while, because then it's no longer a success, and then a new event must be made. You got to get new success. You need to do more, and that's called the hedonic treadmill. It's just some sort of rat race where you got to keep on running to get happy. Now, it's also the other way around. There's something called happiness advantage, excuse me. And happiness advantage tells us that if you are in a positive state, if your brain is in a positive state, you actually perform much better than if your brain is in a negative or stressed or even a neutral state. And if we take that into account, then you would see that if you would work at something being more positive in mind, being more happy, then you would far more easier come to success. I believe there's a number on it in science. It's 1 to 2. So the effect from success to happiness is factor 1, but it's twice as strong the other way around. So taking happiness into account, or working on happiness, will actually help you get more successful, and it will actually make you a better vet. So I think that's an important factor. Now, I'm not sure if you were going there, so I talked a lot, but
that was exactly my point. And when you mention magazines and Facebook and Instagram, the kind of happiness that we tend to see there is very expensive, and it's a lot of money, and sometimes it's expensive trips to a sunny place somewhere.
Right.
And if we make that connection, the thought of I'm not that kind of person that needs that to be happy. And I'm not striving towards success in that sense. I'm not striving towards happiness because I want to lay on a pool somewhere, on a poolside somewhere. Happiness to me could be that I have mental energy to be present with my kids when they come home from school. That's a kind of happiness. Even though it's raining and cold here in Denmark, that's a kind of happiness and success that I'm striving for. So that's that's a different way of thinking of it.
I think you're very right. Yeah, and so people might get a different view of what that means because what is presented to them in the first place. And of course, happiness is very personal. So what you just mentioned, I think those are great examples, and I reckon that will indeed make you happy. But unfortunately, there are people who are striving for other stuff, and they tend to get less happy or not as happy as they would if they would have chosen other goals. But of course, that's also a part of personal development, and I think everybody has his own way in that. So it starts with choosing your goals, and your goal to be happy and to be your loved ones to be happy should be a good thing. Now, of course, we just said you can't be happy all the time, so we need to accept there are moments of unhappiness as well, and that's accepting such a moment is one thing, but it's another thing to be apathic about it and stay there in that place passively. So I think it's good if you can find meaning in moments of unhappiness. If you're having a bad time at a clinic, or if you're having a bad time with an owner, then it's very good, and it's proven to help you to become more happy on average. If you can place that time of troubles into a broader view, maybe thinking, well, this event will eventually make me a better communicator with people. It will enrich me, and will be rubbish at the time probably, but it will help you to find meaning in that. Yeah. And same for other stuff, just believing that it will help you to have a good family life or whatever. Yeah.
So let's pretend that we agreed that happiness is something that we have to work on. And and then we go on to what we actually can do about it. I think we should just quickly touch on the 10% that is external factors, because they're mentally taking up a lot of space.
Right.
And then go on to what we actually can do, actions. I did a survey not too long ago, and some of the things that came up is the pressure of time, that we only have 24 hours and we have to pick up the kids and buy groceries and all that sort of stuff. And then there's some that have a very bad boss, that is maybe a stressed boss that doesn't know it himself, and then he's stressing everybody around him, or just have poor leadership skills. That is two of the external factors that actually fills a lot of take a lot of energy with my audience anyway.
I like it that you already put the human factor in the boss just right now. The boss being stressed and that giving that effect. That's very nice to show that right away. I think at first the first thing, having time. You pointed out clearly we all got these 24 hours in one day. So my old mentor in surgery once told me, there's no such thing as not enough time. Everybody's got the same time. It's true, of course. So it's about priority. Something might not have priority. So if you're struggling with not having too much time, then I would advise on looking for, okay, what is it that you would rather do? What you would like to prioritize over that? And you got to do another client, or there's an emergency surgery going on, and you've got other stuff you would want to do, doesn't matter if it's private or in a workplace. If it might feel you give you the idea of being a victim at that moment, right? Because you just it's taking over, and I think it can help to assess that situation and say you would rather do something else. Well, what's keeping you from doing that? And when you might be, maybe the thing would be that you are afraid of that scary boss or that stressed boss that is going to fire you in that situation. Okay, so then it would be nice to discover if that's a highly likely situation. And if that is the case, or if not, if you want to, if that is indeed a priority to you, not doing that task. So if, if you are thinking, well, it might cost me my job. I've got is it worth that risk to do this now? And of course, you've got a choice. People with horrible bosses, and there are some horrible bosses, very human, got their own problems, but they can be pretty horrible to people. People still got a choice. I mean, you can leave, and sometimes people tend to be stuck and stay stuck. And even though you might not be able to leave right away because you've got a mortgage and you've got all kinds of other stuff going on, then I guess you've got the choice to work on it, to either get better, get a better relationship with your boss, or to start quitting. That means see what you have to do in this place, and what you can do outside of your job at that moment to create new possibilities in the future. And what is really sometimes really strikes when you talk with people who are clearly suffering, really, but they are being too passive about it, and that's the main thing that I think. Okay, you need to prioritize working on it. I think that's important. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm thinking of one vet I talked to. She's a pretty, she's a new vet, a pretty new vet, and her boss is stressing her out. And someday she overheard a part of a conversation, and she got the sense that the business side of things weren't running as well as they should, and there wasn't enough money in the practice to keep it afloat, or maybe to pay the mortgage or whatever. So that might have been a thing that she's stressing her boss out, and then he's stressing all the employees out because he wants them to take more money from the clients, and he wants them to sell more food and sell more exams and sell more blood samples and what have you, and maybe not based on veterinary arguments, but purely on what can earn you more money. But that is something that is out of her control. She can't fix the economy of the practice, and she
can't fix the economy of the practice. But what can be done in that case, and that's something. It's good to view such a problem systemically. So there's the boss having this problem, or actually all of them having this problem, because if the practice isn't staying afloat, then they will lose their job, all of them. So this is a systemic problem, really. Now the boss is acting in this kind of way, but the people around them are allowing it to go on. So this vet, she could leave. That's one thing. But of course, she could also address the problem. She could confront him. She could ask about what is going on that's happening. Many times it's really the communication, not people not being able to see each other's motivation for doing stuff. Everybody's got a real good reason for acting how they do. So this boss as well has a real good reason why he does this. It can be that when talking to each other, they will find out, hey, there's another way to it. Or even when they themselves might get help, or that doesn't matter. You can discover that there's another way to it, but be sure that there's a reason to act on it. Otherwise, for them to be important, otherwise they wouldn't do it. Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge for these kind of things is to really come in contact with each other and to find common grounds and to find what are the needs that these people have.
But that's a very difficult thing to do, because she wasn't, as I understood the story anyway, she wasn't meant to have heard what she heard.
Right.
So she cannot go to the boss and point out, I think that we have financial trouble here.
No.
And my guess is that you're angry with me because of that, and not because of my veterinary skills. So she cannot
it's difficult because. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I can imagine it would be difficult if she heard something that she shouldn't have heard. Maybe she can address it and then just be blank about it, or blunt about it. But I think it doesn't have to stand in the way to come in contact. I mean, that's a human there, and if her needs aren't met. I mean, one of the needs, I guess, would be able to work in a safe environment. I'm just making up this, but I can imagine that would be a need for her, and she's not feeling safe at the moment. I could imagine. So this is a universal need. The boss as well has this need. So what could help, and now it's very difficult because I don't know the situation in depth, but on general, these kinds of tricks might work. I'm saying tricks, but if you can somehow translate the issue you've got into more universal needs, like I would like to experience a safe place, and I'm not experiencing that at the moment. And if you could come into a discussion or come into contact with each other, really hearing each other out, then it's very likely that if the boss indeed sees this, he will recognize this need, because we've all got this need. We all got this feeling that we want that. And the thing is, people actually do want each other's needs to be met. If you're telling me you've got some need and I can help, then I'm naturally inclined to help you. Of course, it would be different if it would counter something I would need. But then we would have a nice discussion about it, and if we would have a working relationship, it could mean that we will try to resolve it together, and it will help. Mm-hmm. And say the money issues would be a problem, well, then the need for him to have everybody work harder to get more money, well, I can relate to that. But how are you going to manage that? Now, of course, we know from the studies around happiness at work that bullying your staff won't help. They will make them less productive, higher sick rates, more burnout. So that's not the way to go. But actually coming in contact with each other is the best way. And that might even mean that people do have to choose that it's a mismatch at that moment. I think, sometimes it happens that when you go when I help people with these kinds of problems, and then it's about getting the stuff that's what we call under the waterline, right? We get it up. So what's really going on here? And I help people see each other. Then it's very possible that you can understand each other's point, but you still need to conclude there's a mismatch at the moment, because I can't go on with it. And then you might very well have a friendly farewell, but still have a farewell. Mm-hmm. But I think the main thing is this new vet. I think she would want to keep working, get more experience. I can imagine she would want the Praksis to be successful. I can imagine she would want there's a constructive and happy work atmosphere. And I can also imagine that boss is tossing an enormous load of a Praksis that is going downhill. So if in some way there's a bit of that burden to be shared, and in some way there's more trust to be given to this new employee who is a veterinarian, is probably an intelligent and creative mind as well, and might have another insight into problems, I think that can help a lot. So
what she does actually have control over is her way of talking to the boss. So and I've gotten this story from an email conversation, so I don't have all the facts, and I don't know how the situation is precisely. But other new vets are, I know that's a general concern, that they on the one hand don't feel that they have the experience, and if they're out too fast from a practice, what would that look on? How would that look on the resume? And the lack of experience is a problem when to get a new job, and all that kind of concerns. And on the other hand, they have all the new knowledge, and they have pretty high standards, especially coming out from the University of Copenhagen is the ones I know best. They have a very high standard, and and higher than we did when I came out 10 years ago. And if they're meeting a wall there with the old boss, he has maybe lower standards, or he's not interested in development in that kind of direction. So he might even not know that there's a problem, or he might not feel that there's a need to that kind of development that she feels. But
that's exactly, it's a common problem, right? Getting your employer to accept newer standards. Mm-hmm. And also there's also this need for a new vet to be a good vet, and to be acknowledged by their university, for instance. I know when I graduated from Ghent University, I was totally Ghent University minded. I know that I was a bit of a pain in the ass of my first bosses, sure, because I wanted to do everything different, and I was pretty much how do you call that? I kind of knew it had to be different. And of course, there were new ways, new methods to do so. But I think in my way of addressing it, I wasn't really acknowledging the experience of my boss at that time. When we talked about it and we came to more about the needs, which was I'm afraid I will be losing clients, or I'm afraid I will be losing patients over this, because I know from studies that there is a higher rate of problems in that and that case. Then when we got to that point, then more was possible, because they can relate to not wanting to lose patients. Mm-hmm. Most of the time. I think many bosses, even if there would be some loss of joy of work there, they still know that losing patients is probably bad for business. So you still got some influence there. So also there translate to needs, and also I this is more on my own experience as a vet as well, that we do tend to be delivered as these kind of vets that are all infused with new surveys and stuff. And one of the things I kind of take away from my orthopedic studies I did in Liverpool, I was working with all kinds of how do you say that, professors, big names in that field for a course I did there. And I remember there was this case study we did, and they asked, okay, who would like to comment how to repair this fracture? And I commented, and I would have done, I don't know, I would have done an intramedullary pin or external, I don't know anymore. But it was exactly what they would have done again. So that was what I was taught. And there were, there was 4 other big names there. I mean, the names that I was reading about in the books when I studied at that time. And then one guy said, one of these professors, I don't know his name anymore, said, I wouldn't do that. That's absolutely rubbish. And I was amazed, because I was so certain this was the way. Mm-hmm. And then another professor, another big name, said, I will do exactly what that guy said. And then these guys all together got this great discussion about what would be the best way to address that problem. Yeah. And I know for sure, and they knew for sure from each other as well, that they would all fix that broken leg greatly with their methods. So there's also more to it. And of course, you will encounter practices that we know. I know what you do. I've done it. I've seen it as well. That okay, this should never be done, and I should probably report this vet for doing such a low standard of stuff. So in those cases, I think it's good to translate it to your needs, to see what's going on, and also try to hear the other part. It can be very difficult. I know. I'm not saying this is easy.
No. Obviously, we could talk for hours on this issue, because we are not even we're just scratching the surface here. I feel
it's already time, right?
Yeah.
Man, that's
so
hard. We've got so much to talk about, really.
If you don't mind, I'd like to, if you have a little more time, I'd like to ask you on other things that we could do to get more happiness at work. So the 2 things that we talked about until now is how to prioritize. You don't get more time, that's a given. But you can prioritize what you feel you should have to get done in those 24 hours. And you have to put some sleep in there as well. And then you can, even you don't have control over what your boss thinks and do. You have control over the way you communicate and trying to understand the reasons why he's being such a pain in the neck. So that's 2 things. What are the rest 40% that we can do?
Well, maybe it's good to tell something about the elements that do help us in happiness at work. So that could inspire your listeners to see, maybe I've got some work to do on that field. So I think that's a good thing to address. There's a layer of pleasure and positive emotions we just talked about. And that's one thing. And I talked to you earlier. I would give you some easy exercises to boost that happiness effect, right? Yeah. So that's on that layer. And let me just tell about the layers, and then I'll give some happiness exercises. That may be the best way to do it, right?
Thank you.
Positive emotions, that's one layer. Then there's engagement, and this engagement is about being able to come into flow. Flow being the state where you kind of lose track of time and you're really in your element doing what you're good at the moment. That's also a part of happiness which can be influenced to some part, because when this happens, when your tasks or your challenges are in line with your capabilities. So if they're totally out of line, if you're far more capable than the challenges you might get bored, which is not helping you. But if the challenge is far too big, then you might get afraid or might panic. So you want these to have, they call them Goldilocks tasks, very just right enough. They should be challenging. They should be challenging you to get better. So there's another element to get some sort of mastery in your work. And if you are indeed in this moment in a place where you're thinking, okay, my challenges are too big, then it's good to see what will work. But are you going to work to lower those challenges? And can you do that alone, or does that ask a discussion with your boss or whatever? Or could you invest in upping your capacities on that part? And I want to state here that many times people tend to underestimate their capabilities. A lot of work I do is about self-esteem and self-confidence, and with a lower self-confidence or not, how do you call that? Not a just view of what you're really worth. In that case, everything becomes difficult. So that can be also. It doesn't have to be a technical, a medical stuff to invest in, but it can be a bigger or a more personal stuff. So. That's flow and the capacity and a challenge thing. Then there's meaning, finding meaning in your work. We just discussed that earlier on. So for a vet, you might think that would be promoting animal health or animal welfare. To be honest, if you're talking to vets, you will find all sorts of purpose they've got. It is not always this that is the main thing, but it does help if you see if you're asking yourself now if you are scoring low on purpose, then it's nice to look at that and see if you could do more. But if it can also be just being able to feed your family. And then there's also positive relationships within your clinic, having friends or having good relationship. That's also a part to score on. And I guess another thing would be being able that you achieve something. So there's nothing more demotivating than working your. Oh, I was going to swear a bit, but than working hard,
if you want.
working very hard and not seeing anything happen with that. So definitely try to show yourself and to celebrate your successes. Even if they're very small, and even celebrate your mistakes as well, because we tend to think you can't make any mistakes, but you don't get any better without making them. So that's another thing. We could talk for hours on this, but
I'd like very much to have you back on at some point to talk about especially purpose and mistakes. But
okay,
let's see how that goes. But
I've got these positive exercises. We still got time for that or not?
If you have time.
Well, I can make time. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so because I just want to sum up really quickly, because you talk about flow states. So that's finding the things you do where you look at the watch and say and goes, geez, it's been 2 hours already, and I really have to go pee, and I haven't even noticed yet.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And that's actually what is happening here, because we are going over time, because it just loses of. I do, anyways, lose myself in this.
Same here.
And then there's a purpose. So that's maybe that's a bit very lofty thing. That's the purpose in life, or that's is that correct? That your calling. Right. So that's actually doing something that matters in the world.
Right. This is me calling you tonight at 3 a.m. or something, asking you for something, and then the thing that you would like to do, work-wise probably, that would be purpose. So what would be worth asking your attention about on such a moment? Yeah. And well, I'm not talking about having your emergency shift, of course, at this moment, but that can be.
But helping, that's why a lot of us got into veterinary medicine, is actually because we want to do good in the world. We want, of course, we want the challenges, and that there's some many very exciting and difficult challenges in veterinary medicine. But we also, on a daily basis, do something that is changing the worlds of other human beings. So giving them a good, giving the pet a good euthanasia, and they're going from the clinic relieved that it ran smoothly. That is something that impacted these humans' lives, and they would probably remember for the rest of their lives.
It can be very fulfilling. Definitely.
If we think about it, I think the purpose side of things, even though whatever we call it, is pretty straightforward, I would say.
Yeah, that element of happiness is also the most has the most durable effect. So because it kind of supersedes everything, you can really get a lot out of that, definitely. And it's good to note. I know you got to be wrapping up, so I just want to squeeze this one in. That I think many times we tend to be not so. We could be more friendly to ourselves, right? Yeah. So when you've got this kind of purpose, this goal, I know a lot of your listeners are having problems with this. They tend to beat themselves up about all sort of stuff and not giving enough attention about having reached those kind of stuff. Now, of course, it helps to beat yourself up sometimes to get somewhere, and all of the listeners are vets, so it probably did help them to get somewhere. But I would strongly plea to get a bit more self-compassion in there as well. And that is a very important factor for self-confidence, and is a very important factor in allowing yourself to work, to be happier at work. And of course, we now know that if you allow yourself to be happier at work, you will be a better vet. So there's also a non-egocentric motivation there for you to start doing that.
Okay, but the non-egocentric thing ties into the assignments, as I believe, doesn't it?
The one of them, yes, definitely. So the assignments are all on happiness advantage boosting ways of dealings. So this is about the pleasure layer of and the positive thinking layer of happiness. So here's some exercises from positive psychology. And the first thing is you write down every night or every 2-3 nights, the second or third night, 3 good things you encountered today or that day. It's also called a gratitude journal. Now, what this does, if we are like evolutionary programmed to look at negative stuff, to see if there's not a tiger sloping onto us or something like that, and that's good. That keeps us alive. But it also means that we kind of tend to miss some positive. So you're training your brain to see more positive. Can be challenging at first. Doesn't have to be big. At this moment, just the sun came up here in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. That's also pretty amazing in a rainy country as you have. It's the same climate, I guess, something like that. So that can be a small thing, but it can get onto your list. This will help you to get more positive, to be more positive in view. The second one is to have a diary of positive events. So you just write down these positive events, causing you to experience the same positive event again in your head, and you've got twice the effect. So that's a good one as well. Physical exercise definitely helps. There's even studies showing that it might even be stronger effects than drugs in depression. Now, I'm not messing with any prescriptions here or something, but it's strong enough to say, okay, maybe it's good to have a walk now and then, or to go sporting. Mindfulness or practice meditation does work as well, and all of these things will boost your happiness and your positive way of feeling when you do them for a few weeks, and that will have effect for months. So I would strongly recommend trying those. And then the last one, and I really like this one, this is the act of random kindness. So actually doing something to somebody else, that sounds a bit evil. I mean, doing something nice for somebody else, just randomly, really. Will boost your happiness, and it's very nice to do that. It sometimes takes some courage, though. But
it sounds like, what can you give an example on what that could be?
Oh, it could be all kinds of stuff. It could be small stuff. I mean, one example I like to know is use is very small. It's about one of my colleagues having this big candy jar, and the candy jar was empty, and sneaking into their office or their practice room and just filling their candy jar without telling them that I don't know. It made me happy. It's funny, and I know she still doesn't know how the candy jar got filled. But it can be small stuff as well. When you see a bike light on in the evening, you switch it off. It can be all kinds of stuff. I just the other day I bought how do you call that? Bouquet of flowers, a small bouquet of flowers, because I heard something about our flower shop. They had witnessed something, or there was something. I just bought it and I left it with them to one. So he said it's for the owner. They don't know I did it, but it's just doing something nice, something positive, and it will make you feel. It will make you feel happy, and it will make them feel happy.
So is a general rule that the person that you're doing something nice to can't know it's you?
No, it's not a general rule. I just tend to be sneaky like that. I don't know. It probably says something about me. But no, I talked to you earlier about the project I'm doing in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
And I would like, if there are listeners who would like to talk to me about their happiness at work, they can. I will make some room for them as well. That's the problem. It's called Pay It Forward. There's a beautiful movie, a Hollywood blockbuster about it. And what that idea is that you don't pay the person that's doing something, but you will be doing something good to somebody else. So what I'm giving away is every week, once or twice, I have a walk here in Rotterdam, but for international clients that will be Skype. Talking about their workplace and help them straighten out a bit their minds about what their situation is and what would be the next step. And instead of charging them, of course I have to charge other sessions, but when I do these Pay It Forward sessions, I'm not charging them, and they get a better view of what they're in. We get to another step, to action. So what am I going to do next? And then I ask them to do something kind for somebody else. And it can be all kinds of stuff. I've got vets that are going to do something for a stray dog or for a homeless person's dog. Mm-hmm. I've got somebody who's given something to a refugee here and helped somebody, and all kinds of nice things are going. And of course, that can be totally in contact. You don't have to be anonymous about it.
Okay.
So.
You're actually offering to do a consultation that you actually charge a lot of money for free, and in exchange, the person that you're having the consultation with will have to do something nice for someone else. That's
exactly it. Yeah. Yes. I would like to add some international clients in that project. So that would be good.
So I think here's what I think we should do then. If the listeners here within a week, or let's say 2 weeks within this podcast going on air, goes to the comment field on the blog for the show notes for this episode and write in what they could imagine themselves do to another person. So if we go there, hopefully there will be a lot of suggestions. So my thought is that we can get inspiration from looking.
Oh, that's a nice stuff. That's a positive vibe.
And we can randomly select one or two that writes in there for your project, if that sounds good.
Sure.
So that's a way of participating, is writing in something nice that you could imagine yourself doing to someone else, and that is what you would do if you got the consultation.
Yeah, that's a nice twist. Yeah, thanks.
Good, then we'll do that. I'll explain again in Danish in just a second in the outro.
Sure.
Then. So, Ron, if people would like to read more from you and see more of what you're doing, how is the best way to find you online and maybe contact you?
Well, this podcast inspired me to move on with my international site. So I've got now, there is an English site now.
Yeah.
It's www.veterinaryhappiness.com. You can contact me there. There's a comment field. I think my phone number is there as well. So drop a line or give me a call. That's okay. And the site is now still pretty basic, but I'm planning to have more information and videos on there soon. So I'd like to hear how people are thinking about this subject, and if this podcast was beneficial to them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you very much, Søren. I love to do it.
Okay, det er nu, du har muligheden. Gå over på hjemmesiden på SIVP65 og skriv i kommentarfeltet, hvad du kunne forestille dig at gøre som en positiv ting for et andet menneske. Altså den her pay it forward tankegang. Og hvis du lytter til det her efter den 21. januar 2018, så har vi valgt den, der skal have den gratis coaching session med Ron. Men du kan stadigvæk få positiv inspiration, få inspiration til positive handlinger over i kommentarerne for alt det, de andre har skrevet. Vælg en af de her ting, som Ron han snakker om, som kan gøre en forskel for glæden i dit arbejdsliv. Og så håber jeg, at du ud fra det får en lille smule mere glæde i dit liv, og måske bliver en lille smule bedre dyrlæge, end du er i forvejen. Næste søndag kaster vi os ud i en af de endokrine lidelser, som vi mangler i serien. Det er hypotyreoidisme. Vi høres ved der.